His wallet always holds a note that reads, "A delay is better than a disaster." But on this day, as he piloted the passenger jet and just left the airport, he encountered a collision with a flock of birds. The engine instantly caught fire and failed. More importantly, both engines were not spared. The captain was not aware of the status of the engine at this time, only feeling a sharp drop in thrust. Every step of his operation next was related to the lives of 155 passengers. The captain tried to relight the engine but received no feedback. Immediately, the cabin lost power. The captain didn't hesitate to turn on the auxiliary power unit, and the cabin returned to normal. The flight attendants signaled everyone not to panic. Everyone thought they just encountered air turbulence, but they didn't know that in the cockpit, the captain was racing against death. The captain called the control tower for help. The control tower ordered all planes to stop flying immediately, clear the runway, and assist Flight 1549 to return. But Sally knew that at the current altitude of the plane, they were beyond hope. They could only make an emergency landing on the Hudson River. After saying that, the control tower lost their signal. The dispatcher called Sally over and over again. The nearest airport was only 11 kilometers away from them. However, they received no response. The dispatcher collapsed because the probability of a successful water landing was less than 1%. The plane was continuously approaching the water. Sally operated calmly and decisively, and the co-pilot cooperated unconditionally beside her. The passengers prayed one after another, and some left last words. Sally finally adjusted the angle of entry and prepared to embrace the plane glided for a distance and stopped smoothly in the middle of the river. But a more dangerous test was coming. Sally hurried to the cabin and Zero told all passengers to put on life jackets and evacuate quickly and orderly. The river water rushed in instantly, and the water level soon reached the portholes. The plane could sink at any time. The co-pilot was still in a state of shock. The flight attendant couldn't care less about the leg injury and immediately devoted herself to the evacuation. The front door opened, the life raft popped open smoothly, and the emergency exits on both sides were opened. Passengers stood on the wings and waited for rescue. Some people directly jumped into the river and wanted to swim to the other side of the river. But he forgot that it was winter in New York, with a temperature of only around 0 degrees. Sally reminded them to put on life jackets while taking out blankets and giving them to the elderly and children to ensure that people had a chance of survival in the low temperature. Fortunately, the nearby Coast Guard noticed them, and air rescue was also on the way. The passengers were successfully evacuated from the cabin. The ships that received the news rushed here from all sides. The patrol team pulled up smoothly beside the wing, and the passengers were pulled onto the boat one after another. The pilots jumped into the icy water without hesitation to rescue the warrior who was swimming alone. Another 300 citizens who heard the news also joined the rescue. Everyone joined in an orderly manner. People seemed to forget that this was an air crash with a very low survival rate. Before returning to the cockpit to take the accident record and finally escape to the life raft. With the joint efforts of people, the rescue was over in just 20 minutes. The first thing Sally did after being rescued was to report to his wife that he was safe, but he still felt uneasy. The mayor and police chief wanted to greet him, but Sally only cared about one number, which was 155. He needed to confirm that all the people on the plane had been rescued. However, in the current situation, it was impossible to count the number of people. With the strong suggestion of the co-pilot, Sally was taken to the hospital for a checkup. At this moment, the union president brought a message.
Got it, count? 155. 155. It's official. 155, 155.
At this moment, the boulder pressed on Sally's heart was finally shaken, and the resulting joy and relief, mixed with all kinds of surprises, eventually turned into a sigh of relief. He created a miracle. News reports came in a flood. Sally became a hero in people's hearts. The National Transportation Safety Board invited him to attend a hearing, but Sally never dreamed that this meeting would become his trial. A joint investigation team was set up by multiple departments to investigate the crash. The Transportation Bureau's engineer calculated that under the current conditions, the plane had enough time to return and did not need to take the risk of a water landing. Before giving Sally a chance to refute, they raised another question. How did Sally calculate all the parameters and come to the conclusion that the plane could not land?
There was no time for calculating. I had to rely on my experience of managing the altitude and speed of thousands of flights over 4 decades.
You're saying you didn't do anything?
I eyeballed it.
You eyeballed it.
The Transportation Bureau ignored Sally's judgment, not to mention that the double-engine shutdown caused by the flock of birds was a completely unprecedented accident. No matter how Sally explained, the Transportation Bureau still pressed hard, and even raised doubts about Sally's mental state.
When was your last drink, Captain Sullenberger?
9 days ago.
Drugs?
No, never.
First Officer Skiles?
Don't drink. Never have.
Sally saved the lives of 155 fresh people, but had to endure the embarrassment of being unable to defend himself. Fortunately, in society, it is all praise for him. Taxi drivers feel honored to carry him, and even before the interview, the makeup artist can't help but give him a kiss and introduce him to his single mother.
Well, tell Brenda thank you, but I got a girl at home.
Lucky woman.
Sally felt a little comforted, but he still had to face the cold reality. Just at the beginning of the second meeting, the Transportation Bureau pointed out that the aircraft data showed that the left engine still had thrust and remained in operation throughout the entire flight. That means that the double engine shutdown was Sally's misjudgment. Combined with the wind speed and altitude at that time and many other factors, it is enough to prove that the plane can land at the airport safely. The co-pilot was tired of the faces of these people. A group of people sitting in the office. Why question the savior of more than 100 families? Without Sally, it would be a terrible air crash. But the Transportation Bureau immediately presented the evidence. Engineers conducted 20 computer simulation tests, and all the parameters were the same as those of Flight 1549 when the accident occurred, but the test results were all the same, and the plane could return successfully.
Successful?
The plane landed at LaGuardia, intact, undamaged.
The final hearing came as scheduled. His wife also called at this time. She had once doubted Sally, even putting all the pressure on Sally because of the rent. She never considered the problem from his perspective, but now the wife really realizes that Sally is also one of the 155 people. She almost lost her lover forever.
Yeah, but you didn't. I'm right here.
How are you holding up? I'm holding up. Please tell me this is almost over.
It's almost over.
I love you.
I love you too.
A heartfelt hug, and understanding encouragement, and the affirmation of those strangers supported Sally to regain confidence. This time he wanted to be his own hero. His union friends didn't let him down either. Sally was able to see the simulation test via satellite as he wished. The computer replicated all the parameters and conditions of the day. The simulation began. The flock of birds hit, and both engines stopped. The two experienced pilots immediately made a decision, and decisively controlled the simulated plane to return. The plane successfully landed on the runway of LaGuardia Airport, and the simulation results of the other group were the same, both airports and multiple runways. The simulated Flight 1549 could land successfully. The current situation is very unfavorable to Sally. In order to arrange for today's demonstration, the Transportation Bureau has spent a lot of manpower and material resources. However, there is no difference between the real person simulation and the computer simulation. They don't understand Sally's purpose in doing this. But Sally found a breakthrough. Everyone ignored the most important point, that is, the human factor. Whether it is a computer or a real person simulation, they can react immediately after the accident occurs, and return to the airport along the pre-practiced heading. But no one told Sally at that time. It was the lowest altitude two-way engine shutdown in history. 155 lives were in his hands. No one has received such emergency training. Anyone needs time to make a judgment.
You are looking for human error. Then make it human.
This wasn't a video game. It was life and death.
Sally's statement is well-founded, and he raised another question.
Please ask how many practice runs they had.
17.
17.
The pilot who landed at Teterboro had 17 practice attempts before the simulation we just witnessed.
They even tried to use 17 mistakes in exchange for the success of the simulation. The trial only has zero margin for error in reality.
The reaction decision time will be set at 35 seconds.
In this way, Sally won himself 35 seconds of reaction time. The second simulation test began. The flock of birds hit, and both engines stopped. Add 35 seconds of waiting time. The pilot controls the return flight. However, this time, the pilot was powerless.
Too low. Terrain.
50, 40, 30, 20.
No matter how they saved it, Flight 1549 could only crash into the building in the end. Both simulations ended in failure. The atmosphere on the scene changed. This seemed to be within Sally's expectation. The Transportation Bureau lost its arrogance. Next is the recording extracted from the black box. Everyone was taken to the scene of the air crash.